In Texas, with a historic turnout of 11 million voters, many dollars spent, and a pandemic that has killed more than 18,000 people, America's biggest state remained red. Democrats had expressed many victories in the coming days during this presidential election. Even those in the polling areas have requested that Joe Biden come in to try to claim some of the electoral votes. Joining us now to talk more from Dallas, Texas, is Carmina Barnett. Carmina, you were actually hands on the ground during this election season, during voting day on November 3rd. What's your response to where we are right now?
Well, Nietzsche, I watched as the Texas Democrats, they worked very, very hard for over the past almost 2 years, really, really working to ensure that the Texans were voting. I saw so much money spent in campaigns, and usually you'll see more advertisements for a specific candidate. This time we saw so many advertisements really pushing vote, just really encouraging people to get out and vote and exercise their right. You could see them on the ground in various areas in Texas. Again, really, really pushing. As you mentioned, one of the things was getting Vice presidential hopeful Joe Biden here to actually talk to the people, to actually take advantage of the electoral votes. And unfortunately, as we saw, that did not happen. Now, yes, Kamala Harris did make it to the Texas area, but unfortunately, was it too little, too late? That still remains to be a question. Some people were concerned that he felt like, well, Texas has always been red, so it didn't merit making the trip. But I think it would have really made an
Sure.
impact, and that's what many of the Texas Democrats believe.
Certainly, you mentioned, was it a little bit too late? As you mentioned, this
Hmm.
has been going on for 2 years. And I think that this speaks to that we can never leave any stone unturned. We can never just assume that something is a particular way, because when we look at the numbers right now of the voting that is panning out, Carmina, we're seeing areas where we thought were going to be one way or the other, totally shifting a completely different direction. And we're seeing that this race is extremely close, which means that maybe some additional campaigning or additional visibility in a particular area would have went sent things one way or the other.
That's true, Nietzsche. And really, there are so many questions. We're not really sure what made the vote go in the way that it did. Our Latino community here in Texas, there was a strong support for Trump, which seemed questionable given his policies on the border wall and things like that. So still trying to understand exactly what was the rhyme or the reason, but I can say with certainty that the Texas Democrats really, really put in a lot of work in hopes of flipping the state. So definitely some disappointment there, and I'm sure they'll revisit different ways on how to next time help it get to another level. But very interesting to see what the rhyme or reason will be behind a lot of the voting.
And lastly, I want to ask you, Carmina, because you were actually
Hmm.
working in, on the election day, and you were in the midst of all the voting
Yes.
scenarios. What can you tell us about the temperature of the people during that time?
One of the things I was very excited about, Nietzsche, was seeing so many first time voters. There were so many young people that were very excited to have their first time to vote, but everyone was upbeat and positive. I know there was a lot of negative media kind of putting alarm out there with people, but it was a beautiful thing. We had a wonderful turnout. Of course, you see the numbers there in Texas, but a lot of young people, and I was very excited to see them interested and well versed on information about the voting. So that was a definite positive.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Carmina, always a pleasure speaking with you. Looking forward to seeing what the final results are of this election in the days or the weeks to come. Carmina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Nietzsche.